Hi everyone, welcome to your Photoshop Creative Challenge. My name is Wade Acuff. I'll be your host for this challenge and for the next couple of weeks. Hello chat, what's going on? If you have any questions, please drop them into the chat. If I don't get to those questions, you can always drop that question over on our Discord where you'll get feedback for your work as well. There's also a link to more challenges in the description below, and there's also a starter file for today's challenge. It does have some brushes for you. We're going to be making custom brushes today, so let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so let's read the prompt. Custom brushes, fantasy map challenge number 2. What? Create custom brushes and use Adobe Express. What? For additional resources to create a fantasy map. That's right, we did a challenge way back. I don't know when it was, but it was a while ago. It was another custom brush using fantasy maps as a base. And we're going to cover all new things this time. But I do have a link for you. I believe I have a link. I will drop it in the chat. I will put it on the Discord later. Let's see if I can find that link for you. There we go. That should get you there, I hope. But let's jump into today. So I made a base for this challenge. This is, we'll just take a look at it. Its image size is 4,000 by 4,000 pixels, 300 resolution. It can be any size you want. This is just something I chose. I also have some Adobe stock textures that we're going to use. We may not get to both of them, but I do have these. You can just go find some free ones, is what I did. Let's start with our first brush. Okay, so for a map, we have to have a coastline or water and land and all of this stuff. Well, you could just come in here and start drawing this thing. Here, let me bop back out. You could just start drawing a coastline. Sure, and actually, I think that's a lot of fun to do, honestly. But maybe you're not comfortable with drawing your own coastline. I'm going to show you a little thing, a little way to do this using our good friend filter render clouds. And you're probably like, what? That doesn't look like a coast. I'm gonna hit Control T and scale this up, and let's see. Does this look more like land? I'm just scaling this up using the little thing up here, using our dimensions up top that are linked. Press enter. Still doesn't look that way, right? Well, it's not done yet. We're going to add an adjustment layer down here. If you pull up threshold, now it's starting to look like something. Now you're starting to get some things. You can adjust this threshold to kind of create more islands, more land. I'm seeing you may see this differently. The white part is the land, the darker part is the water. But that's the way I'm using this. And that's a start. I don't think I'm there yet. I may try and scale this up some more. I hope it doesn't break on me. Because I just want a coastline. That's really all I want. So I'm going to find something that works for me. I'm going to drag this around. Okay. I kind of see something happening here. I'm just going to add a new layer real quick, and I'm just going to get real dirty with this, real rough, and just choose a hard round brush, scale it up, and going to paint with black and white to remove the areas I don't want. So I'm seeing like a little coast here that I like. I don't quite like the angle of it. Maybe, let's see, maybe we can rotate this thing. Oh, this might be dangerous. Yeah, it's a little dangerous. Working with a large file here. All right, there we go. Uh-oh. Cancel, abort. Oh, it may work. Okay, we're good. I'm gonna move this over a little bit. Sort of that live panic of what have I done? I don't know what's happening here. Okay, I'm gonna leave everything else in here as is, I think. Let's see, I'm gonna get rid of some of these other spots. And we could just group all of this, go back to our coastline, let's see, dial down our opacity for the group. And you could be like, oh, well, I made a coast and now I'm just gonna make a new layer and outline it. You know, and again, this could be fun to do, but you know, we don't all want to do that. It may be seemingly take too long. So I'm just going to use a color selection, go to color range, select color range, and select the black area. Click OK. I'm just using the default fuzziness. And I'm going to add this, I believe, as a mask. Wait, before we do that, there's a couple of things here. I want to make a path out of this, and I'm going to assign that brush, that coastline brush, to the path. So before we do that, I do need to smooth this selection out a little bit. So select, modify, I'm going to smooth by about 35. And you can make it as smooth as you would like. And I'm going to save this as a mask. And I think, yeah, I'm going to want to invert that, I believe. Yeah, because I want the white to reveal and the black to conceal. But for now, is that correct? Is that what I want to do? I don't know. We'll figure it out. Oh wait, I didn't add that. Is that? Oh yeah, that is correct. Turn that off. Going to add a color to this, just so we can see what we're dealing with as far as our land color. Click OK. Oh, I did it in reverse. Of course I did. Delete that mask. Ignore all of that. Control-Shift-I to invert, then add the mask. Now we have our land. I'm going to turn the texture on behind it, and you can sort of see our water, but we don't have a coastline yet. So I'm going to reselect that mask, make sure that we have the water selected. I know it's hard to follow, but we're going to get there, I promise. So we have just the water selected, and then moving over to paths. If you don't have that pulled up, you can go to Window, Paths. And then down here, we're going to convert this selection to a working path. So now we have this as a little working path, and we're going to assign that coastline brush to this path. But first, we need a new layer to do that on. And I'm going to go ahead and with the direct selection tool, yeah, ignore all that, right? Forget everything I said. But I've got the direct selection tool. And I'm going to drag this out, and you'll see I'll leave one of these. I'll leave this chunk, this path down here untouched, so that you can see what happens if you don't do this step. And I'm just moving these paths off because we're just going to basically make an outline with that coast. Let's see, there's a couple of these. And we'll leave the top one alone as well. Now, with these, go with your direct selection. You have to make sure before you outline the path, make sure you have the right brush selected. So go to your brushes, select the brush, coast outline 2 is what I wanted, so we're good there. Back to the direct selection. I'm going to select these paths again. And then if everything went right, you can right select inside the shape, right click inside the shape, stroke subpath, click OK, boom. I know it took us a while to get there, but now we have this outline and we're looking good. It took us a minute, but we got there. I did want to show you that because sometimes it is hard to kind of come up with an organic looking outline. I'm just adjusting this, but this is what I was talking about. If you don't take those path ends off, then it's just going to make an outline at the edge of those. So if you don't want that, you're going to have to make sure to remove those anchor points off of the canvas. Okay, now we're ready to talk about how we made this brush. I'm going to make a new layer. And if you just scale up the brush, you'll see it's just 2 dots. That's all it is, 2 dots. But if we go ahead and do that, I'm just going to grab our hard round brush and make 1 large dot, 1 smaller dot. Bip. And super simple. From this point, you can press Alt or Option and select that layer. I do want to show you this. If you have other things on the layer and you want to just select that, you know, let's deselect that. Let's say I've made some scribbles over here, but I just want to make a brush out of something I see on my canvas. I can select that, make sure nothing else is selected, switch to the Move tool, pressing V, and you can wiggle it a little bit. It'll snap to your selection. then you can go and edit, define brush preset. I'm just going to call this coastline, something like that. And that's as simple as that. So the whole idea is that you can make these brushes really quick for your needs specifically, and they can be really done roughly if you're just trying to get to the end product. So we've got a brush. It's not behaving like the other brush. Well, we're going to have to define the preset even further. If you go into your brush panel, which you can find from Windows, brush settings, and in the brush tip, I want to make sure my spacing is not 10%. I always want to pull it back for a brush like this, just so that there's no gaps. Because if you leave gaps, it's not going to look good, unless that's something you're going for. But in this case, I don't want that. But in the shape dynamics, we're going to skip size jitter. We're going to go down to angle, but not touch the angle jitter. Instead, we're going to go to control and go to direction. And now you should see something that's very similar to that coastline brush. So you have to, if you don't, you have to save the preset at this point. Otherwise, it won't, it won't keep all of what you just set. So we're going to do capture brush size and preset, which is something you can do. You can scale up the brush size if it needs to be smaller. If you want it to work a specific way, make sure that's all dialed in before you do your new brush preset. And I do want to include the tool settings so it doesn't reset. So I'll just call that, I'll just leave that as it is. So if I didn't do that and I switched back to my coastline, it's just going to behave like it did before. But now with those settings saved, it's the right size, it operates correctly, it can make circles and do all sorts of things. Okay, so that's how you make that sort of brush. Let's just hide that layer, make a new layer. A couple of brushes I definitely want to make sure we get to is the coastline hatch brush, and a forest brush that we made. But first, let's talk about this hatch brush. It makes little hatch marks. Now this is made with a pattern that we're going to make. We're going to do a real quick brush, remake of this brush, I guess. I used a texture brush to do this. I used my standard chalk brush, but I'm going to just use a hard round, just to show that just the base brushes can make all of these brushes. You don't have to have anything special. And I'm going to come in here and make just a line. And then I'm going to copy that line by holding Alt and dragging. And I'm going to make something around a perfect square of these. I'm just basically making a pattern that repeats. But I'm just doing it on the fly because that's the whole point of this. I want to show that you can do this stuff quickly, refine it later if you need to. All right, we'll see if this works. I do want to mess this up a little bit. I'm going to add some texture with a hard round, which is not really the thing you want to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Oh, I have to merge all of these down. Let's see, did I get all of them? No, I did not. Now, did I get all of them? Yes, I did. Okay. So now I'm going to come in here and just, try to make some texture real quick. Nothing perfect. All right, good enough. And then pop in here, and I'm just going to use the marquee tool, pressing M to get our little marquee tool, a little select tool. And I'm going to hold down Shift to keep this a perfect square. Start at the top of one of these lines and then end right before you get to the other one, which will, if you've spaced them out correctly, should be about the right spacing. And then I'm going to turn everything off because I want to keep transparency and I don't need any of this stuff blocking that up. So now go over to Edit, Define Pattern instead of Brush Preset. I'm going to call this Coast Hatch. Click OK. And nothing's happened except you've made a pattern that you can't see right now. Using the hard round, again, just a basic brush, starting with a simple brush. And we've got just to show that that's all this is. It does have some pressure sensitivity on it, which is fine. But now when we bop into our brush settings, we're going to move all the way down to texture, turn that on. I'm going to turn invert off, and I'm going to select the last texture. You can see that I've done this a couple of times. And then with that selected, come down here to height, where it's tells you texture each tip. And I'm going to start scrolling down until I start to see our brush take shape. And you can scale this as you want. You can make the size, brightness, and contrast different. If you have fuzziness in your brush and you want to keep it, you definitely want to adjust contrast and brightness. But now we should have something that looks like that hatch brush. And that's how you do it. But you got to save the preset. You always have to remember to save the preset, hatch. Click OK. Now you can select it anytime and you have a little hatch brush. This is also how you make grid brushes. Let me turn this stuff back on real quick. Oops, not that one. That's how you make grid brushes. That is also how I made the forest brush, forest cluster, which is kind of what this is here. I love this little brush. It does a lot of work. The only difference with this brush, and I'll show you that real quick, is I just took time and made a pattern. This is the file that I made this brush with. And I did leave it black and white, and we'll go under the hood in a second. But this is just a pattern that I made using Pattern Preview. And we'll show a little bit how to do this in Mondays. I think, yeah, next Monday, we'll talk more about repeat patterns. But it's super easy to make these. And then, yeah, that's how this was made. But going under the hood of this, if you go into the brush settings, you can see, make sure we're selected on it. We have our pattern selected, which is here. I do have this inverted. The only difference, because I did have it as black and white, I did change this to multiply instead of height. So mess around with that. Depending if you have transparency or not, you may want to adjust things. So now moving on to the other type of brush, let's take a look at our mountains. So I think I have mountains, hills, grasslands, other stuff. This is a whole map pack. You can make just about anything with this. So let's say there's a mountains here, and I've got a mountain cluster. I don't know. We're not really building this map out, but you can. That's the whole point. So, and full transparency, this was inspired by Tolkien maps that you may or may not have seen in the past. But back to this mountain, single mountain. Let's just bump this up. Let's make one of these real quick. I'll show you how easy it is. I'm just going to use another hard round real quick. Come in here, scratch in a mountain. I don't know. You don't have to get too wild with it. Sure, that's mountain-esque. Something like that. Check in. How do you make it not look like Wheaties? I don't know. I need to show you how to use that hatch brush real quick. But just going to grab this, wiggle it, make sure you're selected on it. Go to Edit, Define Brush Preset, Mountain. Sure, why not? Now we have our mountain brush. It was that easy. Uh-oh, it doesn't work right. So you got to go back into brush settings, go to your brush tip, and I like to space these out so that they don't collide with each other. So now you've got something that looks like that. The next step I want to do with these is just add a little bit of shape jitter. I want to keep some consistency within the line width. I don't want it to be wild, like if I take jitter all the way up. These don't look like they belong in some cases because it looks like a different pin weight was used. So I like to leave the jitter around anywhere between 20–30%. Then you have to save that as a preset, and sure, why not? That's okay. So now we have a preset for a mountain. It's that easy. It's that easy. But let's say, oh yeah, let me backtrack real quick and show you how to use the hatch brush. Super simple. The coastline hatch brush. I'm just going to select this coast. Select Control-Shift-I to get the invert, and then back to our coastline. I like to do a little bit of offset, but I'm not going to do that here. If I hide the selection, I just add this to the edges, just to give it a little idea that there's, you know, shallow water, depth, whatever. Just a way to kind of indicate that there is, this is not land. This is a different thing altogether. All right, so let's say you don't want to draw things, or you're feeling kind of like, I don't know if I can make those. Well, we have another tool in the arsenal, Adobe Express. Yes, I'm going to make some custom brushes with Adobe Express. So I'm going to bump into express.adobe.com. I have a blank project here. I'm going to go into shapes, and yes, we love lamp, but I don't want lamp. I'm going to go and let's say tree. Okay, I want to find something that might work. This guy might work. All right, I want to change the color to black. And then I'm going to download. Now, when I download this, I do want to make sure that it's PNG transparent background. Start download. Save. We'll go back into Photoshop, open. There's my project, open. We have our tree. We can press Control or Command and select. And then from there, we can define our brush preset. I'll just call this tree. Okay. And then going back into our base, we have our tree. Oh, I think we're still selected. Yeah. New layer, just in case. Yeah, we have our tree. But just like the other ones, it's going to do this instead of stamp for us. So we can just change those settings real quick to space this out, change the jitter a little bit. And now we have a little stamp for trees. Using an asset from Adobe Express. I think that's pretty cool. Let's go find another one real quick just so we can walk through that process one more time. So let's look for a mountain. Let's find one. Kind of like this double mountain. Let's delete this. Pull this up. Change the color. Download. Make sure that's transparent. Start download. Save. Back into Photoshop. File. Open. There we go. And then same thing again. Control Command. Select the layer. Edit. Define brush. Mountain. Click OK. Back to our base. And then we have our mountain brush, but again, it's not behaving correctly. So we got to go back into our brush settings, change our spacing out, jitter, and yeah, there we go. So as part of the challenge, you could do that. You could go to Express, grab some brushes, or you can use the brushes that we already have in here. I'm going to delete all of this. It said delete layer. Yes, thank you. You know what? Let's delete this layer as well. But you could just come in here and use some of these brushes. Let me show you how the forest brush works. Again, you can scale it up, cover large areas if you'd like. Make it really small. Another way to use this brush, and I'll do this real quick. I've even given you some single stamps, so you can come in here and just kind of stamp in some, indicators that this is the edge of a forest. I've given you 2 of those trees so that you can kind of do that. I would suggest take your time with that. But let's add a couple of mountains in here, because there's another way I use this little forest brush. Let me add some mountains here. Let's just cluster these mountains in. Maybe there's a couple of hills over here. I don't know. Something like that. You've got to have a single big mountain. All right, so back to this cluster. Wow, what a cluster. This forest brush. And if I put the settings down real far, it kind of gives you like a printer mistake brush, because if I just kind of brush over, it starts to add a little bit of texture. The smaller it is, the better, I think. And so you can kind of see that, oh, I see, it's not quite, if I fill this in, of course we get more forest. But if I kind of just use it just on the edges of things, it kind of gives you like, oh, there's mistakes. So that's another way to add texture. Just different ways to use some of the same brushes. I mean, make your brushes have multiple purposes. Sure, why not? Again, with just the forest itself, you can go slowly and all of them will be self-enclosed so that you don't have to fill in the edges, because you could come around here with a regular brush and just encapsulate everything if you want. But I highly recommend playing around with those, giving all of that a good spin. Please make your own brushes. I left a lot to be explored. We have grassland brushes that you can stamp if you'd like. And I think that's going to do it though. Thanks for everything. Thanks for hanging out with us and learning a little bit about these custom brushes. Stick around for Tyler Pate and the Illustrator Creative Challenge. We hope to see you guys real soon, and have a good one. Bye, everybody.